morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, folks. Thank you for being here this morning. If everybody could take their seat, we'll get started. We want to get started on time. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Let's just take a moment for everyone to find their seat. I want to thank you all for being here. This is our start of our 2024 council. We have a really great feedback. Again, thank you for being here. We have a lot of things lined up for you for the council this morning. I think you're going to walk away. I hope you're going to walk away on Sunday with a feeling of being ready to get out there and do the league's work during the 2024 voter season. We all know it's a very big one. We see a lot going on and we want to prepare ourselves for that. And I'm the intention of the council today to do that. And so I want to move things along, and I will start by asking Darlene to come and introduce the mayor of Lacey and welcome us to his community. Darlene, are you handy? Here she comes. And as she walks up to the podium, I would like to thank Darlene and all of the Thurston County League and the Mason County League. And such a fabulous job getting us all here together in this room and making it a fun event as well. And so thank you, Darlene.
Sorry, when you host something, you're just running around and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're supposed to be on stage. So I'm sorry, I'm Darlene Hine. I am actually the past president of Thurston County League. My term expired at midnight. We are now doing a leadership team, which we think is a really great idea, and we're really pleased with that kind of thing. And I think that's something happening in many leagues, that we're going to a leadership team because it's a lot of work to be president. It is my pleasure. I am a resident of Lacey and have been for quite a long time, and it's a wonderful place to live. And we have a wonderful mayor. He's been mayor now for the last 8 years. Almost 12 years. Oh my God. I don't have my notes. And Lacey is a great place to live, and he is here to welcome us. And he's been a real advocate of DEI, of environmental, of really helping and looking at what is best for the residents of Lacey. And he also works on lots of stuff around Thurston County because the three cities work together, and he is a crucial part of many of the things that the league is working on and many of the things that are important to all of us. So it is my great pleasure to present our current city mayor for Lacey from I lost it because you dropped it back. We are also presenting you with a
Well, good morning. Let's see. There you go. Well, good morning. On behalf of the Lacey City Council, welcome to the City of Lacey. We're excited to be the host for this event and to welcome members of the League of Women Voters from around the state to our community. For those of you who don't know me, this is my hometown. Obviously, I was born and raised right here in Lacey, in old historic Lacey neighborhoods on Lacey Street, where I bought my childhood home actually and raised a family in the same house that I grew up in. Wow. So I'm sure you'll experience over the next few days that Lacey is truly an exceptional city and why I'm so proud to be its mayor. You know, a lot has changed during my tenure on the Lacey City Council. You know, when I first ran for city council back in 2009, I actually remember my first debate that was hosted by the League of Women Voters, where I talked about the vision, my vision for this community that I love so much. wanting, more transparency in local government, better cooperation between the cities and the county, and for Lacey to develop a stronger identity. So we could attract the residences and businesses to have the tax base that would allow Lacey, to provide the best services while also being fiscally, socially, and environmentally responsible. Now, after almost 15 years and 6 terms as the mayor, which this makes me not only the longest serving mayor in Lacey's history, I am currently the longest serving mayor in the state of Washington. So during this time, Lacey has quickly became the largest city in Thurston County with almost 60,000 residents, and we're continuing to grow. And we have another 35,000 residents in our urban growth area. In the past 2 decades alone, we've gone from a small, mostly bedroom community to a thriving city. And that didn't happen by accident. During my time on the council, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in road, park, public facilities, and utility infrastructure projects that will support the public and private needs for decades to come. However, I don't need to impress upon this group the significance of civic engagement, or the importance of being part of the decisions that are being made by government, or the value of serving in public office. I know that the Lacey City Council is entrusted by the public to be an effective, efficient, and high-quality service provider to our residents, our businesses, and the greater community. But this trust only works when public participation and engagement is accessible at all levels, which I'm proud to celebrate here in the city of Lacey. We emphasize as we consider policies and the decisions that impact our community. Local government, however, we can't do this alone. Organizations like yours help with these efforts, often serving as a key conduit for getting the word out and capturing, community sentiment, thoughts, and opinions. And I have a lot of respect for League of Women Voters. For as long as I can remember, your organization has been actively working to make democracy more accessible and easier for everyone to understand and be a part of. And I want to express my deep gratitude to our local League of Women Voters here in Thurston County. In addition to helping lead voter registration, they also perform studies, convene panels. They also perform, they do interviews and moderate informational forums. And all this is done to support democracy and make sure that our voters are informed about public policy issues that will impact them. And for that, I say thank you for your support, for your work, and for your vision. I appreciate you dedicating your time here today, this weekend, making sure our democracy works for everyone. And I hope you enjoy what you're about to learn. And while you're here, please enjoy all the amenities our wonderful city has to offer. Our welcome banner states that we are truly a limitless Lacey, with plenty of options for individuals, families, organizations, and businesses. And please know that you will always be welcome here in Lacey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ryder. Thank you for those encouraging words, and we love to hear that our organization is appreciated for all of the hard work that we do, and that you particularly are calling out our league in the Thurston County. We appreciate that very much. So our next item on the agenda is going to be the plenary session, which starts at 10:30. Before we go there, I would like to take a moment now. In the plenary session, we're going to be electing, or we're going to be working on getting our new nominating committee slate in place. Is that not right? And this is, the nominating committee is presenting to us what's going to be coming in the future. Who will our future leadership be? And before we take a look at who our future leadership is, I'd like to take a moment to thank our past leadership. And for that, I'd like to ask the past presidents who are here with us today. I'd like to acknowledge them. Karen Barrow, could you please stand or wave? And that's Linnea Hurst, Ann Murphy, and our immediate past president, Linnell Hott. And we thank you for your past leadership, and as we look forward to new leadership, the continuity that this represents is important in keeping the league going forward, as it has been doing for 104 years now. So I thank you for being here, and we will again start exactly at 10:30. Jen Winkler is our credentials chair. She will be making sure that everybody who is a delegate is counted, so that we have, I think we'll have a quorum, but we want to make sure everybody is part of that. So to take a note from Jen, and she will be checking on all that. And if you could please be back here and in your seat, ready to begin work at 10:30, I would appreciate it. Jen has something she would like to say.
Just want to make sure if you're an observer and you're not an official delegate, make sure you're sitting at one of the observer tables when it's time to count votes, so that we can just, it's easier to keep track of, so we don't have to make them leave.
Which one of those?
Right here,
Red sign.
the red sign.
The one with the red signs, yeah, in the middle of the table.
There's two right here. Thank you.
Did you sign up for an immediate delegate?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I know, that's amazing, that's good. So, and I mean, this is. Second, let's take that in. That's fine. I know all about it now. Have access. My grandparents were there for how long before they stopped being Yeah. So I don't.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. Well, yeah. I have, successful every day.
Doing, well, yeah. No, like, if people ask, last time about it. Yeah. Only one person out. Yeah, yeah, and I tried to develop this. Survive like. You guys should. Yeah, we did it. Methodology. Tell me what's wrong. I love it. Yes, right, that is. Fourth LD, I think it's like. So like. Get it in one big. So they all. Then all the civil. If I get an individual down and try to find. Fill it out. Basically, I'm like. Seventh grade. I went there for I can tell that I got my computer with you now.
Start in a sec, so. That's next break. Next
Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everybody. If you'll take your seats, we can begin. Let's take our seats so we can begin. Hello, I'm Mary Coltrane. I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Washington, and I welcome you to the plenary session of the 2024 League of Women Voters of Washington Council. The meeting will come to order. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I ask Amy Davis to come forward for the land acknowledgement. Amy is leadership team of the Mason County and is also responsible for our great arrangements today.
So being from Mason County, I'm going to give the land acknowledgement for Mason County. Sometimes we forget that we are situated close to the edge of the Olympic temperate rainforest. So I would like to acknowledge with a debt of gratitude that we are living on the traditional ancestral territory of the Coast Salish peoples who live here and have been stewards of the lands and water from time immemorial. We owe the beauty and abundance of the area to the coastal Salish peoples and their stewardship and relationship to these lands. We can only hope to continue a relationship to the region's waters, plants, and animals through acknowledging their respectful form of engagement with our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. It is now time for appointments. I appoint Jean Snyder as Council Secretary, Jen Winkler as Credentials Chair, and Julianne Kemp as Parliamentarian. Jean is a voting delegate from Snohomish County. Board Secretary Myra Howery could not attend this year, so Jean is here in her stead. Jen Winkler is a member in good standing of the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County. Jen, you want to raise your hand so everybody can know you? Julianne is a member in good standing, but not a delegate and will not be voting during council. I appoint Amy Pelloff, Jean Snyder, and Julianne Kemp, all members in good standing, to the Elections Committee. The Elections Committee is required by our bylaws. The Election Committee will tally votes if there is a division of the House. Jen, please come to the podium with your credentials report.
Tomorrow I'll be at the front. Okay. I'm Jen Winkler with the Snohomish County League. The number of leagues and units at large represented is 16, including those on the phone. We have 69 voting delegates from local leagues and members at large, and we have 8 state board members present for a total of 77. Check my math, but I think that's right. By our bylaws, a quorum is 30 delegates present in addition to any board members and not less than a majority of leagues. So we have 77 signed in and a majority of leagues represented. So we are officially a quorum.
Thank you, Jen. Quorum is present. The chair recognizes Council Secretary Jean Snyder.
I move that the 2024 council agenda be approved as that is found on page 3 of your council work.
Is there a second?
Second.
Karen, second. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of adopting the council agenda as published, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the council agenda is adopted. Thank you. We will now move to the presentation of the standing rules. And I ask Jean Snyder. Jean has a,
I move to adopt the proposed rules as published on page 11 of the council workbook.
is there a second? Ally Welch seconds. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the proposed rules as published on page 11 of the council workbook. Are there any amendments to the proposed rules? Hearing none, we'll now have a vote. All in favor of adopting the standing rules for council 2024 is published on page 11. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion carries, and we have adopted a standing rules for our council. The minutes. The 2022 council minutes are on page 6 of the council workbook. Reading committee was appointed to review the 2022 minutes. They are Joan Lawson, Cam Kirst, and Linnea Hurst. Are there any objections to accepting the minutes as published on page 6 of the workbook? Thank you. This vote is not necessary. We're just asking that they be accepted. And if there is an objection, please let us know and we can deal with it. But if not, we'll just move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, I'll now appoint a reading committee to approve the 2024 minutes after the conclusion of the council. Committee members are Linnea Hurst, Linnell Hott, and Karen Crowley. They're appointed now so that they can confirm the minutes right after council instead of waiting until next council. And I thank all of those who are willing to serve. Nominations. And now Jean Alleman, will you please come to the podium to make your nominating committee report?
I'm Jean Alleman. I'm a member of the Spokane League and am delighted to make this report to all of you. First of all, though, I'd like to introduce the other members of this nominating committee. So if you are here, please stand and we can acknowledge you. Linda Benson, she said she would not be able to be here. Julie Sarkissian, stand please. Deanne Finken and Shelley Knipe. There we go. Thank you. They have worked very hard this year, as many of you have been contacted. I'd also like to take just a minute to acknowledge the current board of our league, the state league. Would all of you who are currently on the board or president, please stand. Would you join me in thanking them? Okay, and now I am pleased to present the nomination slate. You can refer to it on page 12 in your workbook, or we have it on the board here. All of these positions have a 2-year term. So that means if they are elected, they would serve from 2024 to 2026. So please stand as I call your name. For first Vice President, Cynthia Stewart. Yeah. Uh, C4 Treasurer Deanne Klein Parkinson. And we're nominating 4 directors. First, Shelley Knipe. Nancy Halverson. Beth Pelliciotti is not able to be with us. She's awaiting another grandchild. And Allie Welsh from Pullman. Thank you to all of you. And we will be voting on this slate tomorrow morning. During the coming year, the nominating committee will be accepting nominations for the following positions: first president, second vice president, secretary, C3 treasurer, and three director positions, and 3 nominating committee positions. That includes the chair and 2 other members. We welcome nominations, applications for these positions from those people who are currently holding the positions, as well as from all of you and your fellow league members throughout the state. If you find that you do not have the time, or it doesn't work into your schedule to apply, please recommend somebody else for the positions. We need all of your help. Thank you to all of you for the work that you are doing throughout our terrific state and for our organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you to all the nominating committee members. It is now time to call for nominations from the floor. Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations for any office from the floor? Any nominations from the floor? Having called 3 times for nominations from the floor and hearing none, nominations are now closed. And we will vote on the slate tomorrow. And I thank you again, Jean, and all of your committee members, Linda Benson, Julie Sarkisian, Deanne Finken, and Shelley Kanine. The nominating committee does some extremely important work. It sets the direction of the league because it identifies our leaders, and those are the people who make the decisions about where our league is going. And we thank you for this important work. Council is now in recess until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And I will call us in recess and turn the mic over to Convention Secretary Jean Snyder for announcements.
That was the fastest thing ever. Good job.
All right, this is just to get you aware of caucus tonight we have a long list of caucuses, which you've seen in your workbook. Amy is tracking all of these locations, but at the moment, the ones in the workbook, there's been 2 changes, and we'll come back and revisit this again. So don't worry about, you have to instill this in your memory at this point. The one for what are the keys to getting the state we're in, that is now location 8. And then the one on got any plans for the NRVD. No, I'm sorry, that's not one that gets changed. There's a new one on the video contest that will be in area 7.
What page?
Okay, we are on page 8. And as I said, there are loads of caucuses, which I think is really exciting, but
Could you start at the beginning again?
okay, sure. On page 8 is the list of caucuses, then with the room numbers on them, and Amy is posting signs, or will be posting signs all around the rooms, blue signs. You can see one up here on the door as an example, what you will see for this evening when you want to look for your caucuses.
There's a map on the back of your workbook that has everything except for, I think areas
7 and 8 are not marked, but they do have signs up, so, they're on that. They're along the wall that the registration desk is on, so just keep.
This is page 14 in your workbook is a map. But as I said, we've had one change in room number from the text, and we've also had one additional caucus announced. We will go over this again before we leave this afternoon, and she will have a map, we hope, up on the screen that shows all the new locations. But just be aware, there will be signs around showing where they are and the two changes that Amy and I have mentioned, which is the change for the what are the keys to getting the state we're in is now location 8, and then a new caucus on the video contest, which will be area 7. So don't panic. We'll come back and give you the information again. But just to tell you, keep checking this and make sure that you know where you want to go for the caucuses this evening. And if you have any other announcements, if you can get them up to us at the end of the session, and we will try to get them the information out to people. If you'll get them up to me or to Amy, that'd be great.
Where is the video contest? On what page?
They added it.
No.
Added, it's areas.
Oh, I did.
Area 7.
It was submitted after we printed.
Oh, I see that new heading.
It was, the video contest caucus was submitted after we printed the work.
The video contest caucus was submitted after the workbook was printed. So we, just let you know now. So you can all go through it if you are interested. And so as you see on the agenda, we have a break until 11:30 when we will have our keynote speaker, Kris Peters from the Squaxin he's a Squaxin tribal chief. And that will be at 11:40. So I'll appreciate your being ready for that speech or that talk at 11:40. And then we'll have lunch at 12:20. And Darlene, if you have any information or anything you want to tell anybody about lunch, that would be fine. But if not, then we'll follow your directions when we get closer to the time. Yeah, there you are.
I knew she was looking for me. So lunch is going to be right out here. You'll just go through the line and we'll give you your sandwich or your salad. And we hope everybody gets what they ordered, what they want. And there's some people who didn't order and we've got some extras. And so we'll manage it. And we have soda and seltzer and chips and cookies.
Did everybody hear that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good, great. All right, super. Okay, that does it. Then we'll see you back here again at 11:40 for our speaker.
Enjoy your take. Oh.
About the exhibit room next door, Amy reminds me of the exhibit room that you should take a look. So we got a little time now. We also want to make sure we thank Amy as often as possible because she has done such a wonderful job with the Thurston and Mason County Leagues to get this together.
Yeah, talking to myself.
Can you hear me now? So just to mention, the exhibit room is next door. You can take a look there. There's a lot of fun things there. And also to take advantage of this opportunity to thank Amy Pella for all of the hard work that she's done. She's hiding behind the screen and she's operating. So we thank you, Amy.
I've been on Zoom.
That's better. One more. My name is Marty Gibbons. I'm the second vice president of the State League.
Closer to.
Closer even, okay.
Maybe hold it.
Like kiss it.
Let's see, yeah, you might have to hold it, but okay. I'm here to introduce our featured speaker for today. Kris Peters' service to the community is wide and diverse. He graduated from Evergreen State College with a bachelor's and master's degrees. Early in his career, he was a forest fighter in the Yakima area as part of the Hot Shot crew. He then served as a police officer and eventually police chief for the Squaxin Island tribe, and later served as tribal administrator. Now he serves as the Squaxin Island Tribe General Council Chairman. He has also served in the Office of Tribal Relations, part of the Washington State Department of Children, Youth, and Families. He is currently a member of the Board of Trustees at the Evergreen State College. I am pleased to welcome Kris Peters to our council meeting.
I'm gonna take off my jacket. I just got warm all of a sudden. Okay. All right, well. Hakшлahel, Kwal Galapu TDE shed see Squaxidubs chud Stachas Klapsh Teetsta, Kris Peters Teetsta, again Squaxidubs chud, Tilal chud Olympia, Thurston County, Buschutwoot, Eld Inlet, Squayatl, Esquiditseed, and Howatubes. And yeah, I'll stop there. I'll keep going. I love speaking the language. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. But the reason why I did that, and I'll translate for a second, it was an introduction, is, I was asked to come here and speak about tribes, treaty rights, government-to-government relationships, just a little bit about our history and protocol. And so the way I'm going to do that, because I could talk an hour on federal law, I could talk an hour about treaties, sovereignty. I'm just going to talk in story. I'm going to tell you about our history, and I'm going to touch on a lot of things, just generally, some things I'll go in depth, some not so much. And what I want to do is hopefully wherever you're from, you can draw ties from my stories in my tribe and what I've done to just overall about tribal issues. Even though we're all distinct tribal sovereigns, there's a lot of things that we can draw from each other and that we all kind of share commonalities. And so as I speak to our history, there's a lot of commonalities to tribes all over the state of Washington and the nation, quite frankly. And so that's how I'm going to do it. And what I want you all to do is take notes. If there's something, if I touch on something, if I touch on Washington State tribal co-management of fishing, and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, write that down and ask me about it, and we'll delve into it. Let's talk about it. If you want to know about compacts or gaming or any of these things, or the plenary power of the federal government or any of that stuff, let's talk about it. And so I'm going to touch on that. I tell a lot of stories. Raise your hand if you want to interrupt me, or if you want to wait till the end. I'll try to keep an eye on the clock. I digress a lot. I apologize, but I'll try to stay focused. So first thing is protocol. Tribal leaders, back in the day, we would visit other clans and tribes. And the first thing we do is we'd introduce ourselves in our native language. And quite often what we do is we'd address whoever we're talking to. We would state who we are, what band or tribe we're with, where we're geographically from. And then quite often what we do as well is we would state who our families are, because I didn't do that today, but I could keep going, but we would state who our grandparents are and our parents are. Our grandmother Kaya, our grandparents, our Tsapa, and our parents. And then what we'd see is we'd draw comparisons, and you'd see these familial lines, and like, oh, I know that Kris is from this family, or this person's from this family. And then people would have these connections. And so that's a traditional thing as well. So you might hear a tribal leader introduce themselves in their tribal language, and you might hear them talk about who their grandparents are and parents are, and why are they doing that? Because traditionally that's what we did, because we would have ties through communities by those family ties. And so what I just said was I first said Hakshlahel, which is good day, and I raised my hands. This isn't a bad thing. This is a good thing. When you see a tribal leader raise their hands, it's a gesture of gratitude or thankfulness. It's a kindness. We'll sometimes do it at the beginning or the end of seeing you. Or if you say something that I appreciate, or you do something I appreciate, and I raise my hands to you, or you see a tribal person raise a hand to you, that's a good thing. It's like, thank you, or gratefulness. Thank you. So Hakshlahel, Tuagalapu Galapu Tidiishet is to all of you, my friends, my family. I said Tsiab, which is honorable, and Tsiaya, relations. You are my relations, maybe not blood, but I see you as relations. And if I call you relations, that's a good thing. That means that we're connected in some way. And we are connected because of the service that you all provide. You're Washingtonians. You guys are doing good work. And as a Squaxin, that means a lot to me. I feel a connection to you. So I called you relations. And then I said, I introduced my name. My traditional name is Klapsh or Klabash, Klabish, a couple different ways to pronounce it. I have an ancestor whose name was Klabash, lived in the 1800s. My grandfather named me after him when I was born, because my grandfather, the story goes, was a very honorable leader, a kind and compassionate person. My grandfather took one look at me and said, "This is Klabash. We're gonna name him Klabash." I didn't know that story. I always known it's actually my middle. I have an English name. It's Kris Peters. My middle name is Klabash, or that's my native name. And I always known it was that. It wasn't until later in life that I was told that story by my dad. And it's meaningful to me because I really take pride in wanting to be also. I don't want to take that name for granted. If that person was a good person and a good leader and an honorable, compassionate person, gosh darn it, I got to live up to that too. So that's meaningful to me. So sorry, I get a little shaky when I talk about that. So Klabash is my traditional name. My name is Kris Peters. It's my taxpayer name. What else I say there? Oh, I said Studchas Squaxidubs Chud. I am a citizen of the Squaxin Island tribe. Studchas is the band that I'm from. Specifically, my family ties go back to Studchas. It's a small band of people that's part of the Squaxin people. And then I said, Talachud, I said, I think Olympia, Thurston County. That's where I'm from geographically. I'm from this area. And I said, Baschutwu. We actually called the Olympia area, Thurston County area, Baschutwu. It means land of the black bears. Land of the black bears, because as legend has it, or not legend, as our oral testimony has it, is that the black bears would gather around what's now the Deschutes River and fish and gather. And you could probably picture this area 200 years ago and how beautiful and plush and just a wonderful place it was for anything to live. But the black bears used to live in this area. So we called it Jutwoot, land of the black bears. So that's where I'm from. And then I also, just to make a little more specificity, I said Eld Inlet. So if you're familiar with Thurston County area, there's Bud Inlet is Olympia. The next inlet over is Eld Inlet or Mud Bay. We call that Squaith, or also we pronounce it Squayatl, named after the band of people who lived there. That's where I currently live. And then I said Esquiritzich, Jen, I'm grateful to be here. And I said, Howatubes, thank you for having me. That's what I said. Yeah. There's a lesson in that again. That's as tribal people, we would introduce ourselves, and it's a good thing for people to know who you are and where you're from, where you're coming from. So, a little history lesson. And again, I wanted to kind of draw ties to this from wherever you're from. The Squaxin Island tribe, we have a reservation in Mason County. We're not, and there's a little island, South Puget Sound, Sailor Sea, called Squaxin Island. We don't come from Squaxin Island. We were put on Squaxin Island and later put on this little reservation in Mason County when it was hard to survive on this little island with very little resources. And that's the thing to draw from, is that as tribal people, wherever your local reservations are, might have been within their traditional lands, but that doesn't encapsulate who they are as a people. They're actually much grander than that. If you live in the city of Wenatchee, guess what? There was an actual tribe, a band of people called the Wenatchee that lived there. And when the treaties came along, the Wenatchee people were actually put on the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. So the Wenatchee are actually Colville now. And that's the way it is for a lot of these tribes, the Tulalip's, the Chehalis. There are a lot of confederated bands of people that were brought from their traditional lands and brought together with other bands and put on these reservations. That's what Squaxin was. Squaxin actually comes from 7 different islands. 7 inlets and 7 different bands. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think Squaxin Island Tribe, this little island or maybe this little reservation in Mason County of 1,200 people, that was once nearly 50,000 people of all these bands, including the Stutchos band. People don't know that downtown Olympia, where the old brewery is, there was a longhouse there. And there was longhouses where the old Priest Point Park, now Squaxin Park, there's bands of people who lived in families at home. They were called the Stutchos people. They weren't called the Nisqually. Any Nisquallies here? I have friends with Nisqually tribe. Olympia, this is the biggest misnomer. Olympia is not Nisqually land. Nisqually, and this is in federal Indian law, is on the Nisqually River, up towards Muck Creek, up to Mount Rainier, vast, beautiful land base. Olympia was the Stutchos, and Eld Inlet was the Squayatl. And then we had these 7 bands all over into Shelton, the Sahiwamish, and the Noosachatl on the next inlet up. And they were all brought together after the treaties and put on Squaxin Island. And that's after a lot of other things that happened. And so we lived on these inlets and these waterways for 10,000 years. There's archaeological evidence that showed that after the ice age and the glaciers receded, our people started to settle in this area. And we lived and we flourished. And again, going back 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, if you were to picture this area, what a wonderful place to live. I mean, year-round, mild winters, you don't need to go anywhere. You have everything. And all the tribes in this area were really wealthy, super wealthy and we didn't fight with each other because we didn't need to. We had all the resources in the world. People would come to these areas for thousands of miles and trade with us because of our year-round resources. Our cedar trees, which we would make homes, canoes, clothing, rope, everything, the year-round game and salmon. And then we had this potlatch area just south of Tumwater. It was a known potlatch area where tribes would come, and the Nisquallies did have a camp there. The Chehalis had a camp there. The Cowlitz had a camp there. And the people would come and we would stay and we would trade. And it was a well-known potlatch area where we would all trade and be family. And again, our wealth would just grow. And I speak to the tribes. We've been economists forever in our trade. We were some of the first economists of this area. We were. And so we were incredibly wealthy people for so long. And the other thing about Squaxins is in the late 1700s, George Vancouver comes in his ship, stops right around what's now the Narrows Bridge. And then Peter Puget, his first lieutenant, and a group of his guys, they started exploring all these southern inlets. They go to the southernmost inlet, which is now Olympia, and they meet the Indians there. And they describe them as beautiful looking and beautiful regalias in his little notebook. And he described us as the friendly Indians, very compassionate and kind. And that's meaningful. And we read those books, and as Squaxins, we're like, that is who we are. We've always been that way. We are very compassionate people. We're kind. Even today, we don't want to fight with people. We want to bring people in. We want to be community. Even if we have differences, you know what we want to do? And this is how we've always done it. We always invite people to us, to our table. We break bread. We talk about our differences. We talk about what we can do to overcome some of our problems. And maybe we'll disagree. That's okay. But at least we understand each other. And as Squaxins, we hold that value. We always have. We call it Quidixalt. It's just a term of gratitude. It's actually walking with gratitude. It's something we've always carried. And so when we actually found those journals and we read it, and we're like, yeah, of course, he described us as that. That's who we are. That's who we have always been. So moving forward in history, we're the friendly Indians. We lived in these areas. Unfortunately, as colonization came in, disease broke out. We got pushed away. 80% of our population kind of died off. Some bad things happened. In 1854, there was a treaty, and there was a small Indian war, mostly led by Chief Leshai and his Nisquallies. And then we were put on these reservations. And then slowly in the 1900s, my great grandmother Josephine was born on Squaxin Island. And then in the 1900s, we were able to get a piece of land in Mason County, where it's at in Camilchi now. And we have just flourished from there and had to overcome a lot of diversity, a lot of assimilation, a lot of trauma. And now we're in this age that we call self-determination. And in self-determination, and a lot of tribes are doing this, is we have found rights and we found ways to grow our economy. So back up again with the treaties. When we signed the treaties, we agreed to not fight anymore. However, and go on these reservations, knowing that we were giving up our land bases, knowing that we were giving up a lot of our resource, all of our resources, and essentially our healthcare. Our healthcare consisted of outdoors. Our classroom was the outdoors, and we lived in unison that way for thousands of years. And so by being taken away, it caused all these health issues, and our culture and our people started to die off from that. But the promise was, among other things, was that we'd be able to continue to fish and hunt and gather, perform ceremonies within what we call our usual custom areas. And that was established. So we could continue to do that. So so that's what we did. If you were to go out here in Bud Inlet in August, there's a king run, you're going to see Squaxins out there fishing. Not Nisquallies, because they don't have the right to. It's against the law for them. Nobody else. It's Squaxin only. We are the only ones, because established in the treaty and affirmed in the Bolt decision. If you guys want to know more about the Bolt decision, US v. Washington 74, we can talk about that too. Affirmed in Bolt decision. All of our UNAs were affirmed and discussed and in writing, and now we have these rights to 50% of the fish catch. And that's those, and we say that they were affirmed. They are inherent. They weren't given to us. They didn't say, okay, now you have the right to do this. We always had the right to do it. We always did. It just affirmed it. Those inherent rights. And we just continue to do that. I mean, we can talk a little bit if you guys want to about the fish wars of the 70s and what the state tried to take those away from us. But we continued to do that, and we still do. We fish, we shellfish, we hunt, and we gather, even though those things are starting to be encroached upon in other ways. It's no longer a fight over whether we can do it or not. Now the issue is it's not to fish, it's whether we can catch, because the fish are dying in other ways. It's because of climate change and global warming and acidification and failing septic systems and all these things. There's so many things that are killing our fish and our shellfish and even our elk. And so that's the battle we're fighting today. But now as we're in this area of self-determination, the other thing is we realized is that we can, as sovereign nations, go into our own economy. We can create businesses, because I'll just be honest with you, we are socialists. We take care of our own. We always have been. As tribal people, as bands, that's how we survived. We taught each other. We raised each other. We helped each other. We provided for each other. That's just what we've always done. And that was taken away from us for a long time. And so what we do now is we create these economies with these fuel stations, casinos, seafood companies, all these things that money can go back into our reservation. So we have nice roads, so that we have a nice social services departments, law enforcement, fire department. We have all these things that other jurisdictions have, and we pump that back into our reservation so that we can heal as a community. I say that because over the last 150 years, our people have gone through a lot of trauma. And I always stress 150 years of history. 150, 200 years, 1800s. Seems like a long time where we've gotten today, but the reality is it's a blink of the eye when it comes to tribal people who've been here for thousands of years. And so we still have this strong connection to these lands and these areas, because 150 years is nothing. But over 150 years, we suffered through great trauma. And a lot of our folks on the reservation are dealing with things that they don't even totally understand themselves. And there's this generational trauma that they're dealing with that just continues to be perpetuated. And what we're trying to do now is heal from that, trying to solve it. And any good psychiatrist will tell you the only way to really heal from trauma is to talk about it. So what we do, myself and others, is we talk about what happened, not as a way of we need to hear sorry or we need to feel bad for ourselves. We talk about it so we know, like, oh my gosh, that occurred. And now we're going to grow from it and we're going to heal from it. At the same time, we're going to be self-determined and be proud of who we are. I have a great grandfather who was ashamed at one point to be Native. He was ashamed to speak to it because he dealt with severe racism. And so, but now we're like, no, we're proud of this. That's why we do land knowledge. That's why we raise flags, so that when our tribal people are off the reservation, they're proud of who they are and where they come from, so that they can start that healing and growing. And they know that they're more than just this little piece of reservation that the federal government put up. And so we grow from that. And all this money that we make, we put back into our reservation, into treatment and healing and all these things, these good programs. And probably one of the biggest ones that we do is invigorating our culture, drumming and singing and canoeing and language revitalization. Nothing feels better for me than when I speak the language that my grandparents spoke. It's a southern dialect of what's called Squaxin. It's a Squaxin dialect of it. It feels good. The canoes, when we bring our canoes back to life, that was our main mode of travel. When our bands were visiting each other, we rarely walked. We canoed, because if we're talking about bringing our families and all of our things, we didn't have horses. Walking, we would get in our canoes, and anybody who spent any time out here in Puget Sound understands that those tides are powerful things. If you know how to use them, they're powerful. And the tribal people knew that. And they could take their canoes from Eld Inlet to Bud Inlet. They could take their canoes up to Hammersley Inlet in Shelton, Oakland Bay. They could do that, and that's how they visited each other. And so now today we're bringing that back. We get on our canoes as family, and we sing, and we speak the language, and we practice our culture. And what a healing thing. We bring our folks in that are dealing with addiction from our treatment center. We bring them out on their canoe, and you see the smiles and the uplifting that occurs in that. It's amazing. And so we have this tool that so many other communities don't have, and we're trying to use it to our advantage. And we know that although it took generations to get here, and we know it's going to take generations to overcome it, that's what we're trying to do today, is educate, grow, fulfill our hearts and our spirit, and move forward as people. And we're seeing that from other tribes as well. And so we are, as tribal people, embracing not only who we were at one time, but also embracing the society that we currently live. Again, it goes back to that. We don't need to fight. This is what it is at this point. So let's get along and let's work with the system. Let's use some of our economy to our advantage. Let's go out and build allies and educate and grow as tribal people, so that we can strengthen our sovereignty. Because right now, as tribal nations, when we sign those treaties, although we're sovereigns, we are still under the plenary power of the United States government. We are citizens of the United States government. So as sovereigns, kind of like the state of Washington, the state of Washington is a sovereign in itself. It still falls under Supreme Court, the executive order, and Congress.
Yeah.
Same thing with tribes. We fall under all those things as well. However, we don't necessarily fall under state law. Now, there's certain compacts and there's some federal law that creates different things to where we have to follow certain rules, but they're good things. Like our businesses need to follow OSHA requirements. That's a good thing. It makes sense. We want to do that too. We want to follow L&I. We want to follow health department standards, those types of things. So but that's under federal Indian law. Federal Indian law created those rules that we need to follow those, which we all concur we do need to do that. If we want people to be healthy on our reservation and frequent our businesses, obviously we want to do that too. So those are good things. We have compacts with the state with our gaming. Those are agreements on how to manage and do that in a good way. So there's all these little rules. We co-manage fishing, for instance. It's a really fascinating thing here in the state of Washington. We have wonderful scientists and fish managers that manage the fishery, licenses, tickets, all those things, and openings, closing, all the gear, just like you would in a state fishery. They co-manage, our scientists co-manage that with the state, and our law enforcement co-manages it with the state law enforcement. And all those catch reports are shared, and they're managed throughout the year. They meet you throughout the year, and they go over catch reports, they go over projections. All those things are happening. It's a really neat thing that our state is so unique on. A lot due to the Bolt decision in '74. So these are some really cool things of relationship between the tribe and the state that we do, even though we're distinct, separate sovereigns. And again, it's the federal government. All these things are mandated by congressional acts or Supreme Court rulings. So I would keep a close eye on this. So I will go all over the place telling stories and things. I think I have like 10 minutes left. I don't know if you guys, if we want to go into questions or you want me to just keep talking. But I'll take questions. Sure.
I'm curious, and it's probably hard to do some generalization, but given the experience Native Americans have had with government, How politically engaged would you say maybe members of your tribe are with local government or state government in terms of voting and being involved and participating? If you could maybe speak to that.
Great question. We are very involved. Again, it's part of that moving into today's society and learning how to play the game. Because if you push against the system, it's just going to run you over. You got to work with the system. We get it. So we understand part of that. Over the last 20 years, when you look at our growth in political power coincides with our growth in economic power, that's not a coincidence. As we've grown our economies and as we've started playing the political game, we've grown politically, strengthened that. So we lobby. I'm in DC ample times a year. I'm in Olympia all the time. I've got Patty Murray's phone number on my cell phone. We are constantly now. Let's not kid ourselves. Patty Murray is a friend. Strickland is a friend. These folks are friends of ours. They truly are all about sovereign rights. However, I'm not going to lie. We throw them some money. We do. We play the game. We have for years. We have, it's just how it works. And so we have lobbyists both federally in DC. We have lobbyists in Olympia, and then there's a handful of us that are always meeting with these folks, our representatives. At Squaxin, we have land both in Mason and Thurston County. We are overlapped. We've got Derek Kilmer in one district. We got Strickland in another. Both wonderful representatives of ours, good friends. We've got so obviously Murray and Cantwell. These are folks that we are constantly year round. We hold fundraisers for these folks. We invite them out. We take them for tours. We go out and meet with them when we're in DC or in Olympia. We're constantly playing the game.
Well, also,
Mhm.
that's leadership.
Mhm.
But how about the everyday
Yeah.
member who, we have trouble getting people to go and register and vote? Do you encounter the same among?
We absolutely do. We struggle with getting the vote out. It's a thing that we try to campaign as much as we can. We try to give facts. We just try to say, okay, this person believes in this person believes in this. Now, understanding that we have some tribal members that have an inner struggle. We have tribal members that may have some personal politics, but they also maybe have some tribal politics. They don't necessarily always align that we found. And so that can be a struggle sometimes. Do we vote for this person that maybe aligns with our personal politics or this person who might be better for our tribal sovereignty? And I know some family members of mine that really struggle with that every time they go to vote. Which word do my loyalties go? And I just say, you got to prioritize. Everybody's going to have pros and cons. And you have to, and I don't tell people who to vote for. We have one of our governmental liaison will put out a thing that just says this person supports tribal sovereignty, gaming, these types of things. This person doesn't, and it's kind of guide if they're looking in the tribal way that kind of guides voting. But as a personal time, we don't tell people who to vote for. But that's the thing. It is a struggle because again, we go back to the inner res. And I'm proud of our tribe and the education and the people that we have. We got some really sharp folks. We have some people that are still struggling, no different than maybe somebody from the inner city or somebody from like a poor neighborhood. My wife comes from a poor neighborhood in southern Idaho. It's a country town. They deal with a lot of intergenerational trauma too, and she's white. So there's a lot of similarities. But we have these folks that are struggling, and it's trying to educate those folks that it's so important to vote because they just don't want to. They don't want to deal with it. They're dealing with their own trauma. And so it's important to vote so that we can continue to be supported, so we can continue to provide resources. And so it is a constant struggle for us. We're always trying to educate and help people, make it easier for them with ballot boxes and just all kinds of things. It's
Here's a question.
Yeah.
A couple of questions. Could you talk a little bit about, given the Byzantine laws and court cases around Indian law, Indian nations, could you talk a little bit about what you would see as the ideal relationship between your tribe and the U.S. government? And then the other thing I would love to hear more about is because you're a tribe, there's a lot more what looks to me like communal sharing of benefits. How would that differ from the way, say, things would work for me as a member of a town?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, every tribe's a little different when it comes to our resources coming in, and we don't all agree on how to do this. We do see our tribal members as stakeholders, and we really do. And how do you overcome all this money, this flood of money that comes in? For Squaxins, we put 95% of it back into social services, roads, parks, all those things. And then we'll give them a couple of checks up here, just small checks. Some tribes, they write big checks. I don't think that's a healthy way to overcome trauma. I just don't. So we don't do that at our tribe. It's just a small thing, like we do a small check before Christmas, a small check right before school starts. But everything else goes back into the tribe. The relationship with the state and federal government, so I do adjunct work at Evergreen. I do an entire quarter of this. So I'm going to try to be quick. This is a big one on ideal government relationship and what does that look like? I could be an extremist and be like, let's draw a border and it's just us and you do your thing, and that'll never work in today's society. We have got to get along. We have to work within the confines of the state and federal government. And so just understanding the history of the federal Indian law, why we are where we're at, and then how do we move forward, and we respect each other's authorities and work forward and move forward. I think that's ideal. It can be difficult depending on who's in charge and what their values are and the people they put in charge of their departments. But really, what I need is, whether it's the president or the governor, I need them to understand that understand sovereignty, the trust responsibility, understand that we are sovereign nations, and give us as much autonomy as we can to govern ourselves within keeping people safe and visitors safe. And so part of the problem is, and I could go on for an hour on just jurisdiction. One of the things that they've done is they've really handcuffed us in regards to victimization on the reservation and crimes based on federal Indian law. It's a system that they created. And if they could give us back jurisdiction to take care of our own, we would fix a lot of that. There's this movement about MMIP, MMIW, you've probably heard some of that. That's because of the disproportionality of missing and murdered Indigenous people. It's massive. It's huge. It's a legit thing. Why are all these Indian people, Indian women, dying and being violently attacked, all these things? And then you look a little further. I read a DOJ report from a few years ago. 60% of the violent crime that occurs are done by non-natives.
Yeah.
So it's mind-blowing to me. Why is this happening? And then you look at the jurisdictional things that have occurred over the last 100 years about who has jurisdiction. It is an absolute mess. It's rarely the tribe. The tribe has limited jurisdiction. You'll see tribal police. They write citations. They can make arrests for minor crimes. They can do of tribal members, not non-tribal. They can't. A non-tribal member could come on the reservation and run a haywire, and the tribal cop can either just watch them do it and call the other police to come, or they'll have the ability, if they've created MOUs, they can stop them and detain them until the other cops come. That's a mess. That's an absolute mess. And so, and you can imagine in today's world, it's a lot better because of the relationships and the funding. We are able to give a lot of training, and we've created all these MOUs. So our law enforcement are really up to speed. But think back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we didn't have the resources. Or in some of these counties where there's severe racism, where maybe the county or the feds, they don't care. They're not going to come out. That was real. So victimization occurred over and over and over again. And then some of these, we're blessed here in Washington that we are surrounded by a lot of progressive counties and cities that are willing to help. But you think about some of these Midwest, Pine Ridge, and some of these other places that are just out in the middle of nowhere, they don't have anybody to help them. The nearest FBI office could be 100 miles away or even further, and they could have 2 agents. The nearest county could be who knows far away. And so when a murder or a rape or something bad happens, and it's a non-native, those law enforcement officers, there's only so much they can do. I mean, the suspect has constitutional rights. You can't just arrest him and put him in a jail forever. You have to have jurisdiction. There's laws on how long you can hold them. There's all these things. And it should be that way. The problem is the federal government hasn't created resources for these tribes to deal with it. So they have actually perpetuated the issue. So how do we overcome that? Trust the fact that the tribes are now in a place of self-determination, again, that word, where we can, and we have the resources to create systems to where we can enforce our own laws and not break the constitutional rights of the non-natives that are coming on the reservation. Many tribes. We're going to follow all the rules. And trust that, but but the problem is they don't trust it. They still feel like tribes are like youth and care. You know, we have to control. We can't trust you to take care of your own. We're the only ones that can do it. Problem is, over the last 150 years, we've shown that they can't do it because of all the criminalization that's occurring on reservations. 60% of the crimes, violent crimes, are by non-natives. You don't allow us to enforce those. These are facts. So I don't know if I answered. I went off on a tangent.
Right order.
Okay.
Just real quick, sorry, I didn't, making a vacation, about the schools that you run.
Could you stand so everyone can hear your question, please? Thanks.
I think I can. That you run. The native schools.
Okay, yeah. So Squaxin we don't have our own school. Some tribes do. Squamish is Chief Seattle, wonderful school. Some tribes do have their own schools and they're very successful. We don't. We put our kids in public schooling, whether it's a Shelton School District. We have kids that go into the Olympia School, Griffin Middle School, and elementary, Capitol High School, Olympia School. We have kids that go into public schools. What we do, though, is we have an education department and we have a team of liaisons and tutors. And we identify where all of our kids are and where they're at in the school system. And we have inserted these liaisons in these schools so that those kids have someone that's familiar within their community that they can go to if they have an issue. Because some schools are better than others. Some schools aren't good about inclusivity. They're not good about, okay, you're a person of color, and we recognize that our school isn't exactly good about wrapping our arms around you. It's very sterile, it's almost like walking in a hospital, some of these schools. It's like, I talk to these principals and I'm like, why does it look like I'm in a hospital here? It should be covered in diversity. There should be no question that it's LGBTQ plus month. There should be no question that it's Black History Month. It should just be, and these are I'm sorry if you guys don't agree, but it should just be full of diversity so that these kids are raised in an area where diversity is normal and they feel welcome. Because when it comes to our tribal kids, that we have found is education or cognitive ability is rarely the issue when it comes to making it to school, especially going off to college. We're tribal people. We're all about community and connection and our culture. This is how we thrive. And when we get to go to these places that are not tribal and we don't feel welcome, we get withdrawn, our kids struggle. And so what we found with our tutors is they'll struggle in school, and then we have our after school programs and they'll be sitting with the tutors and they're doing great. They know the answer, but they struggle in school because they have that lack of connection. And so what we've done is we've just put tutors and we've just funded people just to be in these places to where our kids have an ally. And what we've started to see is some of these schools that have struggled with it start to turn a little bit. They've realized that instead of just hammering on these kids and disciplining them, let's work with them and we'll see that they're actually more successful. And we see the long-term effects of that. So that's how we do it at Squaxin. Like I said, some tribes do have their own schools, and those kids are just immersed in culture and tribal people, and they're really successful, and I'm proud of those folks for doing that.
Thank you.
So we have time for one more question over here.
Okay. Didn't know we'd have time. So you talked a lot about connections and getting tribes active in voting and civic engagement. I come from the Palouse, so very smushed up into Colville. Do you have any advice for the league in order to help with outreach? How do we interact with these tribes and help them support their own civic engagement?
Question. Every tribe's a little different. Some tribes have people that are kind of a liaison that can help guide that. And if you can identify who that person, whether it's the Yakimas or the Colvilles, the Spokanes, Kalispell from over there, that can kind of, that's what I would do. I have people who reach out and they'll sit down with me or our liaison and we'll first say, okay, what are you looking to do? And we'll have that conversation. And then from there, we'll be like, okay, we'll bring other people into the fold and we'll start to strategize on how to get resources or information out to our. So that's one of the best ways I've seen it happen, is find out who from the tribe you can reach out to. If they have a governmental liaison, that's usually the first one to reach out to. Or if you know somebody on tribal council, I wouldn't just cold call a tribal council member or anything like that, because you get so many emails and calls and it's just like, it's just hard to keep up on it. But if there's a person that that's their job is to kind of intake stuff like that, that's who you'd want to reach out to. And then go from there. Because there is, especially on the reservation, kind of the inner res, there is, and rightfully so, there's a lack of trust there from outsiders. And I understand it. I get it. Even though you may have the best intentions, there's still a lack of trust. And so respecting that tribe and their leadership on the best way to do this is the way to do it. And so it's probably just maybe email several people within their staff, maybe their executive staff, and say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and I want to help you guys. What can I do? They may not get back to you the first couple of times, or they might. And if that's the case, awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Kris. That was so.
Thank you. I want to, yes, thank you. Just really quick before I forget, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you and the League of Women Voters. We say Howard Tubes is thank you, or Howard Tubes should love. I'm thankful to all of you. And SPDC is grateful because this organization does so much for democracy in a time when we need this. And your work in equity, your work in education. And when I say education, I'm talking about factual, empirically researched data on education, which is so poor. We're just not seeing that these days. We read things on social media and we're just so focused on our biases and we're just swayed so many ways. And you guys are doing it the right way. And it's so important at this day and age that we have folks like you doing that in our communities so that people can make decisions based on facts. And so I wanted to say thank you to you all, Howard Tubes, and raise my hands to each and every one of you for your work. And we say, I just jumped out of my head. I'll just dang it. Just say until we see each other again, but and point is until we see each other again. But there's another one I totally forgot.
This is about what this statement in civic education. I hope you find it useful. We so appreciate your time.
Yeah, really.
As well as
I'm gonna stay for lunch if anybody wants to chat. My contact information is around if anybody wants any.
We are ready to break for lunch. We do have one announcement before we do.
Greetings, I'm Deanne Finken and I work with the news team that produced the local news study. As you know, we are going to Washington DC for national concurrence. If there's anyone here who is planning to be a delegate and would like to work with any of us to kind of work on elevator speeches, talking points, etc., we have a sign-up sheet on our table over there. Please consider signing up so we can work with you about messaging, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can see that Darlene has got things going on out there, so go ahead and we'll see you back, or we'll see you at the caucuses. I'm gonna come up with some information that she's got, so we'll.
Sorry, we do have programming during the lunchtime, so we're gonna let everybody get their lunch, get settled. And probably at about 1:45, we will start the video about the untold story of women of color in the League of Women Voters. And then we will have a discussion afterwards. So anyway, go grab your lunches.
May I have your attention, please? We're now ready for our video for Untold Stories, and Annie Cubberly from the Thurston County League New Leadership Council member is here to introduce the Untold Stories folks, and we're going to be starting that video. So Annie, please take over.
Well, I know everybody's enjoying their lunch, but I really am hoping that you'll be able to pay close attention and quietly watch the video. I think it's really quite meaningful. As she said, I'm Annie Cubberly with the Thurston League of Women Voters, and we are very pleased to share with you this Reader's Theater performance based on the book, The Untold Story of Women of Color in the League of Women Voters. And afterwards, we're going to have a facilitated discussion. Nicole Miller is here, and she's going to guide us in that conversation. And three of us who were actually actors in the theater production are here to answer questions. And I hope you'll have some. The original brochure that was at the performance itself is on your table. And also there's some prompt questions there. If you can't think of a question, but I kind of think in this group, you'll have questions. So we're going to go ahead and roll it. And again, I really appreciate your focused attention on it. Thank you.
I want to tell you a story, a history of well-intentioned white women seeking democracy and equality for women. There is a dark side to the story. It's a story of institutional and personal racism. But it's also the story of strong Black women asserting their worth and persistently pushing open the doors of the League of the Women Voters of the United States. It's a story of the evolution of an organization, the National League of Women Voters, working to create a different future by acknowledging their history and creating a new, inclusive organization that represents all women.
The history of the League of Women Voters is a paradox. It is a story of controversy and compromise and collaboration. It is the story of strategic choices and recurrent themes, and organizational decisions based on the facts as leaders understood them at the time. Those choices continue to define the League today. The relationship between the League and its members of color has been an interesting study in contrast between principle and practicality. The Untold Story is a snapshot of the women who worked on suffrage before the League existed and since the League was formed 104 years ago.
From the middle of the 19th century, Black and white women worked to achieve suffrage. Let's start in the 1890s with the voice of Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, organizer and head of the Women's Era Club, one of the first Black women's civic associations.
It is the women of America, Black and white, who are to solve the race problem. And we do not ignore the duty of Black women in this matter. They must arouse, they must educate, and advance themselves. The white woman has a duty as well in this matter. She must no longer consent to be passive. We call upon her to take her stand.
Some white suffrage supporters assumed the 19th Amendment would apply mostly or only to white women. Listen to parts of the 1903 speech by Belle Kearney from Tennessee, whose words were enthusiastically received at the year's suffrage convention.
The enfranchisement of women would ensure immediate and durable white supremacy. It is upon unquestioned authority that in all Southern states but one, there are more white, educated women than all the illiterate voters. White or black illiterate, native or foreign combined. Someday, the South will be compelled to look to Anglo-Saxon women as the medium through which to retain the supremacy of the white race over the African.
From its inception, the Women's Suffrage Association principles were often at odds with its actions and minimized the role of Black suffragettes. This was partly because of the attitude of racial superiority were the norm among white Americans of the era, and partly because they were pragmatic in assessing that there was little hope of achieving the suffrage amendment without at least some support of the Southern states who still practice racial segregation.
On June 4th, 1919, Congress approved and sent the Women's Suffrage Amendment, the 19th Amendment, to the states for ratification. 6 months before the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, the League of Women Voters was formally organized. In 1923, Maud Wood Park, the first League of Women Voters president, described the League as, quote, every woman's organization. Even though the organizational documents reveal that the League made a strategic choice to provide education for Black women, but discourage membership of Black women. A League gathering in 1927 reported on the extent of separate white and Black League chapters.
Mrs. Anderson, chair of the 1927 gathering, reported that there have been 4 requests for the organization of new colored leagues. She acknowledged that at present there are known to exist 3 local league chapters formed by Black women in California, 1 in Chicago, 1 in St. Louis, and 1 in Tacoma, Washington. She reminded the leaders that it had been decided that it was not desirable to encourage the organization of colored leagues, but that the goal of civic education for colored women can better be promoted by offering civic education classes. In contrast, in 1928, a letter from the National League of Ohio League of Women Voters stated that local chapters in Oberlin received Black women members freely and equally, while other chapters received Black members but made them unwelcome at their luncheons and social gatherings.
Nation faced the depression of the 1930s, unemployment issues dwarfed concerns about civic education and suffrage. The League carried on at the state and local level during those difficult years, but by 1940 there were leagues in 31 of the 48 states. Black women brought their commitment and wisdom to the work in local chapters, contradicting stereotypes held by some whites that Black women were not suited to the same civic engagement as whites.
Women of color dared to believe that the League, as a national organization, would recognize the importance of their inclusion, That, however, was not the case. A stark contrast existed between intentional and unintentional action of the League's national leaders. Women of color were not defeated by this experience. Even though their choices for affiliation were invisibility, assimilation, or something in between, women of color continued to work with the League.
And as the nation leaped into World War II, after the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7th, 1941, the League looked inward to organizational matters. This was a time when the nation increasingly accepted racial segregation in education and the military. Membership in the League throughout the South was restricted to whites only. In the 1940s, the League took no stance on voting rights, even though poll taxes, literacy tests, and Jim Crow intimidation limited Black participation. In the wake of President Truman's 1948 executive order to desegregate the U.S. military, Black-led organizations ramped up anti-segregation efforts. Some carefully chosen lawsuits were combined into the landmark Brown versus Board of Education U.S. Supreme Court case. In the 1954 decision, the court outlawed segregation in schools. The case hinged on the idea that the separate schools for Blacks were not equal to schools operated for whites, and that every child, regardless of race, deserved a first-class education. Despite the nationwide interest in the unequal segregated schools in the South, the League was silent on the issue of school segregation throughout the 1950s. 2 weeks before the Brown versus Board of Education decision was announced, the League president, Percy Maxim Lee, spoke of the need to avoid splitting the League over racial issues by avoiding the study of school segregation.
Ladies, I have come to look upon the League not just as a worthwhile and somewhat incidental occupation, but as a vivid and vital expression of the imperishable idea that's deeply rooted in the American conscience, the idea of dignity and worth of individual human beings. Now, this issue that we are posed with does not need crisis treatment as much as it needs steady, commonplace, everyday application. And so, the League has no position on integration or on segregation. We must work first to protect the integrity of the League itself.
A 1956 Chicago Daily News article about the League entitled, "This is no pink tea, ladies," reported on the unwillingness of the League to address controversial issues like segregation. News, hot off the presses.
Even though the League of Women Voters of the United States is often called the most significant organization in the country, on many of the controversial issues, the League was silent. It is because their members chose not to address these issues for study. Let me quote a League spokeswoman who said, "We don't expect or seek unanimity amongst our members. And if we simply have a segregated or separate opinion of an ideas, we just don't address it."
The National League's lack of a stated position on integration posed a problem at the state and local levels. After the Supreme Court decision ended segregation in schools, local leagues continued to attempt to navigate the issues of segregation and integration and receive guidance from their state chapters, even though there was an absence of policy from the national leadership.
In August of 1954, at a League Council discussion, given opposing integration positions between members of southern and northern states, it was, quote, stated, A fortunate thing that the League could take no position on the matter, end quote. In a letter, League President Lee sent this advice to the southern states on the matter.
It was agreed that the state boards of the League should advise local leagues to avoid taking any stand on segregation unless they have overwhelming membership support and considerable support from the community. They may not take action on any controversial school integration issues.
Decades of the 1950s witnessed unwavering attempts by people of color to be acknowledged as first-class citizens. The League would not risk its prestige on civil rights. Its tradition of finding consensus or avoiding the issue continued. For many local and state League members who were taking action, the national response was viewed as too much study and too little action.
The 1960s were a time of sit-ins, bombings, the March on Washington, the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the Children's Campaign in Birmingham, and legislation on civil and voting rights. More Black women joined the League, attending local, state, and national meetings. The doors to the League were not always fully opened, however. For example, some national meetings were still being held in cities where white and Black patrons could not be served from the same dining room.
In July 1963, President John F. Kennedy invited League President Ruth Phillips to attend the Civil Rights Conference for Women. But since the League lacked a position on civil rights, Phillips told President Kennedy that the League could not support the Civil Rights Act pending in Congress.
And a few months later, The Voter, a League newsletter sent to every member, included a message from the League president, Ruth Phillips, about the turmoil in the League and the League's response.
The demonstrations these past months are the outward and visible signs that one minority group, the Negro, is no longer willing to be relegated to second-class citizen status. At present, the League has no formal explicit position since civil rights had not gone through the usual League process of study, discussion, consensus, and action. The League can address this issue by gaining an understanding of the nature of the problem in its various forms in different geographic areas, and by gaining an understanding of the role and responsibilities of the federal government.
At the 1964 convention, the League discussed a possible civil rights study and decided that it should remain, quote, a not recommended, end quote, item. Instead, the League adopted what was called a human rights study. The study focused on education and job opportunities. Without a civil rights position, the League did not participate when Congress debated and passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, a bill that gave teeth to the right to vote regardless of race or national origin. An Ebony magazine article reported on the views of Negro women who had joined the League.
In the 1966 issue, I reported on the views of 20 Negro women across the country who were League of Women Voter members. I asked why more Black women were not members. These were the answers they gave me. 1, the League was an invitation-only organization. 2, it worked on issues that were not solutions to problems faced by Black women. And 3, League would diminish time available for other efforts. Here's what a New York State League member, Gloria Marquez, said on behalf of the benefit of Black women in the League.
If Negro women like me join in meaningful numbers, they can play an important role in bettering conditions of all Negroes through their lead work. They can also help white members to more clearly understand Negro problems.
"1968, the year Martin Luther King was killed, was a breakthrough year for the League. It was also the year the 1968 Civil Rights Act passed, a bill focused on housing equality. That year at the National League Convention, delegates amended the League's housing position without the usual study, consensus, position process. Rather than calling for a study, convention delegates approved adding equality of opportunity for housing to an existing housing position statement. Black women attending the 1970 League Convention spoke out about the need to recruit a more diverse membership. Listen to the Black Caucus voice in that year.
The League should now know that citizens' needs must be defined by citizens.
New diverse members are bringing to the League valuable and unique resources.
They bring imaginative and vigorous leadership potential, particular commitments, an ability to work in partnership with a variety of people, and a freedom from the stranglehold of arbitrary and irrelevant traditions.
The benefit of this input to the League program will be lost unless the League gives a higher priority to the need for this contribution.
At the same convention, League delegates heard from a young civil rights leader and attorney, Marion Wright Edelman, the banquet speaker at the 1970 convention.
I want to talk about what is on my mind as a Black person. I have never seen so much reliance on goodwill. And today, we don't need more goodwill or good faith. We need good work. I have never been so reliant on I have never seen so much reliance on rhetoric. So many people getting caught up on rhetorical rationales, denying the real problems that are confronted today. I have never been so afraid of inactivity and ineffectiveness of an organization who would think they can rely on their historical histories and their past glories by not maintaining their relevance with the very tough problems of today. What can we do? I hope the members of this League will begin to deal more honestly with the facts that are around us. Thank you.
In spite of the increase in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives beginning in the late 1990s, the League has remained predominantly a white women's organization. In 2002, 5% of League members were of color. Even though the numbers would increase marginally through the state and local chapters, at the League, as the League has evolved and improved, it still does not represent the demographics of our nation. After decades of organizational realignments, the League must build on past achievement while learning from its missteps. My dream for this organization in the next 100 years is that it will recognize the value of all people, not just rhetoric. In value, not just voice. In beliefs, not just benefits. That women of color will no longer be invisible, but brought out of the footnotes and into the mainstream narrative.
So you've heard a story
about the evolution of an organization. Please join us now in working to create a future in the history of the League and creating a new inclusive organization that represents all people.
Well, thank you for that. I want to introduce now Nicole. I always want to say Perry because I knew her when she was younger. Nicole Miller, who's going to lead us in a discussion. And Loretta Sepinen is here, over here, and she's going to come up and sit at the table and answer some questions. And Kieran McMichael is also here to answer any questions. So I did put some prompts on your table if you're don't have a question. And I'm going to let Nicole take it from here.
Hello. Hi, Nicole Miller, she, her pronouns. So questions? You have a question? Okay. Because we only have 2 microphones. I need to get my steps in today. So I'm gonna walk to you so that you can use the microphone and we can all hear.
First of all, thank you. That was wonderful. I really appreciated the thoroughness and the background research and everything that went into that, the transparency of it, the truth of it. And what I would like to know is, going forward, what can we do? What is the next step? How can we make this not right, but how can we make this better? How can we reach out and achieve that diversity that you're mentioning? Because I know I personally am ready for it. And I won't speak for the rest of them, but I'm assuming that being of intelligence somewhat, that we're all ready for this.
Great question. I think one of our esteemed panel members is going to take that question.
For me personally, I think that when I was first asked to join the, one of my friends invited me to join the League. And when I started working, I think it was such a welcoming place, but it was not something that was ever on my radar. And I didn't realize really about the power and the history and about the wonderful people that volunteer with the League. And Carol Goss reached out to me. And so I think that having this diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is really actually seeking to make positive changes and make the League more welcoming. I don't think that people of color should only be on that committee, but throughout the whole League. And I think coming into communities and just letting people know that we represent everybody and it's not an inclusive or exclusive club, rather, is really important.
I just want to put a shout out to Carol Goss. Where are you? Oh, there she is. I mean, she has led our DEI work and Nicole's taking it from here. But you could probably, in the follow-up workshop of MELD, right? You're going to be talking about what we're doing going forward. Thank you.
So, the author of the book, The Untold Story of Women of Color and the League of Women Voters, Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins, who was the president of this league at the turn of this century. In the book, I believe the battery died on this one. If someone from hold on, I got bored. It's clear that one of the things she wants the league to do is start recognizing that the agenda for, and she speaks mostly as a Black woman about women, Black women, but the agenda of Black women may not be the same agenda as that I, as a white woman, would think to put on the table. And so that part of what we need to do as an organization is start listening to what is on that agenda of Black women or Native women
or Hispanic women or Asian American women. That's our responsibility if we want to be a place that women of color will find that they are welcome and can actually have a meaningful role in the organization.
Where they feel like they belong.
Yes.
What about, I'm just impressed by what Kris said about how much more successful Native American students were when they had a Native American coaches and people helping them. So instead of one by one inviting African American women into the league, what about reaching out to the NAACP or seeing if there could be groups of women who would be interested in joining so that they could be supportive of one another and perhaps make it more successful? It's just an idea.
I think that is one of our strategies is to be engaging with other organizations and figuring out how we can support their work too.
So yes, I agree that supporting the work of the other organizations is probably one of the most important things. In Seattle King County, one thing we found is that, it's not like a Black woman might already be very busy with an organization that supports her. So are we going to ask her again to take up more work, or are we going to support what she's doing? And also, I think we cannot approach Black women as a monolith, just as we're not monoliths.
I have a question for league leadership and women of color across Washington in engaging with groups. So like I'm thinking Washington State University, where I'm at, we have a prosperity project that helps women of color not be taken advantage of by the student financial system. In approaching a group of women of color about joining the league, is it more appropriate for us as white women to say, this is everything the league can do, you should join us? Or is that more of an appropriate time to say, what can the league do for you if you join us? Like how is the best way to approach the outreach and the engagement, I guess? Sorry, that's a big question. So I wasn't actually paying attention. I was looking for the next. Are you asking about, you said something about doing outreach and engagement. Is it better to ask communities of color, like what do they need? I think both things are true. And I definitely cannot speak for Black women, but when I'm doing community outreach and community engagement, I'm definitely going to people in community where they're at and finding out what they need. I'm not asking them necessarily to do things for me. So I guess, yes, in answer to your question, I think when we're doing outreach, we should definitely be telling folks what's the benefits for them in being a member and what do they need from us. I hope that's helpful. Yes. I am definitely not an expert on anything.
I was going to say yes and yes. Exactly. I think that it's really important to understand that people do have set of beliefs and goals and incorporate those things into, I guess this one's dead too, but incorporate the community's needs into what the action that we're taking. And I think it's really hard when we're looking at different things that are going on right now. There's so much political division. I think that realizing that there is a place for democracy, there is a place that's supporting voices being lifted up throughout the community. I think that's a really important role, and without all of the derision that's going through the media. Yeah, I think it's I think it's wonderful. I don't know if I could put Dr. Jackson on the spot. But I know as a community leader and activist, I don't know if you also wanted to on that question.
Well, I would just add to the comment that there are more commonality than there is difference. And when we talk about the League's goals and objectives of preserving democracy and fighting for the rights of individuals, the right to vote, women's rights, people's rights in general, they don't differ from the goals and objectives of communities of color and Black women and other women of color. And so if we can get beyond just thinking about differences versus commonality, and where we can contribute, and where we have honed leadership skills in our individual communities that can help the League in its objectives, and what the history of the League has been to help us in our objectives, then it's a win-win for everyone. But getting over those past practices and those past beliefs is the main thing. And I was approached by my friend Carol, and I will call her out. And she took me to lunch and she said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure, I'll see, can I answer it for you? In all these years you've been around here in the Lacey community for over 50, why haven't you ever entertained the thought of joining the League?" I said, "Why should I? Your history is such that you've not wanted people like me. Why should I?" And so that began the conversation. And how long ago was that? A little less than a year now. So I'm a newer member of the League of Women Voters. And the information that I'm garnered, the reading of the book and the interaction, it helps me in reaching out to other Black women to say, yes, this is what the League has been like, but they're working very hard to rebrand themselves. They're working very hard to understand their history and reach out to other women that they have excluded for various reasons. So give them a try. Begin to attend some of their activities, and don't think in terms of their past, but think in terms of the future they're shooting for and where we can fit in and help them achieve their future. And as a result, we achieve ours.
So that was more gut wrenching because they're real people saying those things than if someone's just reading it. And what occurred to me, I wonder if the author got into what caused these women to stay in such an abysmal place and were they just hoping we would get better? I wonder about their backgrounds. That's what I kept thinking when I was watching that. Why would they stay?
From what I gathered when I was reading, it seemed that the common good and the goal was worth putting up from the racism and the exclusion and the lack of support for issues that really were imperative for the nation. So kind of joining forces and putting in the good fight for the greater good in hopes that it would one day come to be as it was recently. But I think the author even said that when she was president of the National League, that she also experienced a lot of pushback and trying to but people trying to push her out of the league. So it was something unique through her experience in leadership and the support that she together. I think it's something that it's a work in progress. It's not just a finished work, but it's something that we need to continually progress through.
What I wanted to say is that we really need to acknowledge to the public that we didn't do such a good job with that and let everyone know. Because like I've seen women in my community, I say to my friends, you know her, go ask her to come into the league. She was
going for a city council position and didn't win, but we need people like that and we need them to win some of those things. And those are the people that we want in our league so we can have a strong decision-making body and forget about our past, but remember that it happened because we want the whole community to be strong. Thank you.
I think one of the things that we tried to do by putting this together was to own our own history and look at it right in the face and say, this is who we were, and that's no longer who we are. We're changing where we're going and how we want to be seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
The last comment that you made me think about an issue, and I just want to ask a question to the group. Raise your hand if you spent any part of your career as the only woman in a male-dominated office. All right, raise your hand if you found that job exhausting. And we're white. And the problems that women of color faced were much more manifold. And I think of that every time I'm trying to do outreach and just think of how exhausting that was being asked to put forth my view and how it contracted you a little bit when you thought about, oh, good, they're going to shut me down again. Oh, good, they're going to talk over me in a meeting again. Oh, good, they're going to take my idea and get credit for it again and again and again. And I think that feeling is something we need to really touch gently when we do community outreach, because that's really what, as an organization of predominantly white women, that's what we're asking of other people, is to be that person that we had to be in those male-dominated fields and in those male-dominated offices, and just tenderly holding that and thinking, yeah, it's hard. And thank you for showing up.
I just wanted to switch gears maybe a little bit and make an observation about the positions, how we neglected to take positions on something that was controversial, and just remind us as leaders today that this is us now facing things that we don't want to deal with because it's, we're not really sure, right? So I saw a lot of people shaking their heads like, how could she have said that at that time? And remember, at that time, that was normal. That was what they were living. And so if we're thinking of things right now, like, oh, that seems really hard, I don't think the league can do that. This is us today, what they were doing then. So just something to reflect on, not with racism in specific, but just our positions as a league and what's important to us and what maybe we could rethink.
Yes. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, good. Here and then you.
Thank you. Just to shift gears a little bit again, I think if we could do more focusing on the common good. And to me, in this particular subject area, that means learning how to be better allies, as opposed to having people join us or we join them, but to be allies on things that clearly matter to all of us. I'm not sure how to do that. I know we've tried. It's very tricky, but that's what I would like to do.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna just do this and then, oh, it's because you're right here, and then I'll just, and then I promise.
Harkening back to history, I listened to that woman, that Southern woman who said white Anglo-Saxon. I would not have been accepted because my heritage is not Anglo-Saxon. So, think about that.
as we move forward? Who are we including and who are we not?
Thank you very much for this marvelous presentation. If we wish to do something like this in our community, are rights available? Would we contact one of you? What kind of things would we find out for that to happen?
We have the rights to put this in about this form, just as a sheet of paper to be used within the league. So we could share our script with you.
You could do a presentation.
And you would do just as it's done on the program that's there, that indicates the permissions, you would include that permission statement that's on the program that's on the table.
I think the one word that we all need to internalize, and you did such a beautiful job of answering it, but it's why. Why do any of us join the league? You know, it's not, why should I join the league? You know, I'm a person of color. Why did a white person join the league? Why does anybody join the league? Why are you here? If you can answer that with your heart, then you have a way of communicating to other people your why, and it's probably their why too. The why.
Other questions, comments?
As you think about this untold story, there is another untold story that I think we need to examine in the league as well. And that's the story of the Equal Rights Amendment and the League of Women Voters. How many of you know that the League of Women Voters was one of the leading national organizations in opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment until 1946? Then I'm glad that I saw people who remembered that. In 1946, the Equal Rights Amendment almost passed in Congress and then would have gone out to the states. It didn't, but it was very, very close. So the league chose to pull back their no position. And then how long do you think it took before they went through the process again of study and consensus and a position? How many years before the league took a stand in affirmative on the Equal Rights Amendment? Till 72, right? 72, it was going through Congress and it was becoming now clear that it was going to pass. And so it took that long to go through our thinking process. The Equal Rights Amendment, maybe it shouldn't be in the Constitution. Maybe it's not the most important issue. But the League, it was an important women's issue. And it was a women's organizations, both pro and con throughout its history. But this League had that opposition position, then no position for all that long period of time before it went through its process and decided how it stood. So one of the issues that I think this book raises is how the League's strong faith in its process may be one of its weaknesses while it's simultaneously a strength.
Oh, it's a mic drop. Yeah. So before we wrap up, I just want, I don't think anybody said it, but if you have not read the book, I really want to encourage you to read the book. That's the only thing I wanted to say.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you, everyone who has participated in this. Very thought-provoking, very interesting, very, I think, something to carry with us every day, as Rosalind mentioned, in our hearts, so we can be thinking about this, and we thank you. So we have a break now, and